Like right now we're super bad to nature, but even if we were only mildly bad, it's just like extending the runway of a startup. You will still die, right? It's just like much longer away. Well, what if our goal was like a net positive to nature? We're at this really unusual stage where the evolution of consciousness needs to happen faster than the evolution of technology. Otherwise, we're done.
So, first question I want to ask you, to confess, I pulled Xavier aside right before this and said, well, what is something I can ask Tom that I've never asked you at the very least? I really liked his response. My first question for you is, can you tell us all what you think the essence of you is?
Okay, that's pretty straightforward. So, no, so it's not that hard. So basically, it's like kind of like this continuous inquiry, because and I'm kind of like very even-handed on stuff. So it's like, and I think it's very helpful for inquiry. Yeah. Right? If you like come to inquiry and there's like a position you need to represent or whatever, or these people need to be the good guys and those the bad guys or whatever, and you can't help but color it. So I like try to be even on almost everything, even when things are horrible. I'm just like, okay, what's going on then, right? And try to dig into it. And then on top of the inquiry, it's like, how do you take what you learn from the inquiry so that like, you know, the most people, or, you know, in the long run, like all of civilization and nature is benefited. So like that's the whole algorithm. That's it.
It's pretty good. Yeah. So if we're, what's that?
It's all math.
It's all math. It's all math.
It's not that mathematical, because like so much of it is qualitative.
Yeah.
Like how do you tell that society is benefiting? Well, you can't come with like some precision model on what the perfect society is. That has failed and created fascism and done many bad things throughout history. So like the best way to figure out is like, hey, in your, you know, lived experience, has this been of service to you or not?
Yeah.
It's fully qualitative. And I say, well, is it been of service to you, and has it been to service of like the community and society that you've been a part of? And if both things are true, boom, that little technique or that experience ranks pretty high. And then I collect this across a gajillion data points. Yeah. So if it is mathematical, it's stochastic, empirical. It's not like, you know, from the like first principles, like analytical mathematical sphere. It's just like every single experience. So I was just at this thing called Optimist Fest, and they have a bunch of speakers that are like business speakers, but they also have a bunch of people that are from the spiritual side. And like, you know, sometimes they talk about like energy healing and all this other stuff, but as a scientist, it's like not at the top of my list of like, this is probably how it works. But I kind of, no, I mean that like truly in the flat, neutral way that I just said that, because here's my attitude toward it, which is, if you have a system of beliefs and it actually leads to you like being more engaged and connected and serviceful in life, I kind of don't care. Like whether, you know, so, because I have this, I mentioned on the first night, all of life is physics and psychology. Like physics is about truth. So if you're trying to go tell me that something, you know, gravity doesn't exist, or like, you know, quantum physics works some way that it doesn't work, you know, I'll let you know that that's not the case. But like psychology is about beauty. And what I mean by that is psychology is the discipline of living a beautiful life. So if there's something that you believe and psychologically it helps you live a beautiful life, I'm all for it. Like, go for it. Right? So I like meet these people that I think other people would put at arm's length, where it's like, I'm a healer that does so-and-so. I'm like, well, tell me like what it's done for people. And then I'll talk to those people, and like, if it is truly the case that it's helping them live a more engaged, connected life, I'm all for it. Now, if they're fooling themselves and it's really like a disguise for a cult or some other thing, I will totally call that out, right? But it's like, but if the person really is coming with the true intention to help people, and the people that I'm talking to that have experienced that seem to be having benefit from it, then I'm like, you know what? That's a psychological technique that seems to do something useful. And I'll do like I'll put it on that same empirical scale with every other possible belief system, and be like, okay, that's up there. That's good. So
Yeah.
when I say flat, I really mean it's flat.
Yeah.
Like it's good. Every single psychological belief that you can have, I just put it on the scale. Does it truly serve you or not?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, kind of in your background, you mentioned this earlier. You have 75 patents. You've worked with some of the largest corporations and technology companies in the world, working on all these breakthrough innovations. And if your end game is to kind of maximize benefit, either for the planet and or society, in a sense, like both, actually, like how do you gauge that you're actually doing that today?
Yeah. So you need to have some sort of visible change in time, space, matter. Otherwise, nothing's changed. And then I'm always looking at what is the highest leverage thing that I could do as this particular person on Earth relative to that goal.
Yeah.
And also, I need to keep revising the goal. Like I showed that slide of the children's book, and I was like, you will begin chasing what is the most important problems for you to solve, and it may it may completely consume and destroy your life, but whatever. So that's the thing. Because I don't know, I've had a lot of really good jobs.
Yeah.
And it's like there's a lot of jobs that I could have just stayed at and made millions per year, and it would have been freaking fine on so many fronts.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, I just kept chasing and still am chasing this thing in order to go push the thing forward. And the most recent incarnation of this thesis of finding higher leverage is, well, what are we actually trying to set out to do? I think the thing that we need to set out to do is humanity needs to become a net positive to nature. There's no other state that we can be in where we do not run out of gas at some point in time.
Yeah.
Right now we're super bad to nature, but even if we were only mildly bad, it's just like extending the runway of a startup. You will still die, right? It's just much longer away, right? And even sustainability, actually I think that is a great waypoint. But the thing about sustainability is typically when we talk about sustainable things, it is the intersection of something that is useful for the environment or neutral to the environment, and the technology at the time, and what the market wants at the time. So when you think of this three-way intersection, well, the environment, has this particular set of rules, but the other two things change really quickly.
Yeah.
Right? Tech and market change pretty quickly. So you might totally hit the pocket on something sustainable in the year 2016, but you add 10 years to it, and market and tech will have changed. But what that actually means is you were sustainable then, and then it disjoints a little bit because the other two move. So the net integration of the disjoint included is actually slightly non-sustainable. Because it basically says, oh, hey, well, we put all these factories together, we got these material flows and supply chain going, and then we got it to a sustainable point, and then it disjointed a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying that is not insanely better than companies where it disjoint from the start, right? That is way better. But when you think about the end game of humanity, it's you can't even have a little disjoint.
Yeah.
Right? So I started saying, well, what could we do instead? Well, what if our goal was a net positive to nature? And this is really, and first you need to say, when you go down that line of inquiry, well, what is positive in nature? And how would you define it? Whatever, right? So I spent a lot of time studying ecology and talking with people in the space or whatever. It's really, if you really need to boil down, it's just a couple of things. With humans on the earth, do we add more topsoil every year? Right? And is that healthier topsoil? Is the air and water getting cleaner every year, right? And in the places where nature is biodiversity stable or improving? And it's if those things are true, you're net positive to nature. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Right? And every one of those things is measurable, and actually much of it measurable in a very straightforward way.
Yeah.
Right? Some of them require some human inputs or whatever, but I'm good at replacing things with machine learning and robotics or whatever. It's even some of those hard ones, it's we can dig into and make simpler. So anyway, that's the gist of the thesis. But then this most recent insight basically shocked me into a different path of action against this frame, which is so I live in Hawaii part of the time. I live right next to a coral reef.
Yeah.
And it's we bought the house because it's one of the was one of the best, most beautiful reefs in the entire island chain.
Yeah.
And my routine was wake up in the morning, go snorkeling is the first thing in the morning, see the reef, come back, eat a breakfast, it's just amazing.
Yeah.
Right? And it's over the course of like just 18 months, I saw the reef like go from every single color in the rainbow, like 100 fish per square meter, to like just brown and white and like 1 or 2 fish. That happened in 18 months.
Wow.
And it's like, then I was like, what happened? It's like we have some weird pollution in our thing, but it doesn't make sense because we like live in the countryside. There's like not even enough houses to generate enough pollution to kill the whole reef. But it was like the whole thing in 18 months. And I started doing more research, and I was like, oh, this is happening everywhere.
Yeah.
Like 15% of all reefs in the world right now are experiencing that right now.
Yeah.
Which means 2 years from now we will lose 15% of all reefs in the world. And then like the latest projections on the whole thing is that like we'll lose 90% in 20 years and all of them within 40 years. So like imagine 0 coral reefs on Earth in 35 to 40 years. That's the current trajectory that we're on.
Yeah.
So like the like a light bulb went off, or a dark bulb, I don't even know what to call it, because this is not a happy moment. But it's like, well, I know for a fact, because some of you guys like already know this, because some of you are these companies. But I was like, I've invested in renewable energy companies and like folks where I was like, yeah, I want to go replace the existing carbon carbon generating energy system that we have with one that's going to be carbon neutral or carbon negative. That would be great. But like I started to realize, like really, as soon as I had that experience with the coral and looked up these stats, I was like, wait a second. Like even if we had completely renewable energy infrastructure tomorrow, we have like a 100-year hangover up there, right? There's carbon and methane that's up there, and then it's actually getting worse. The permafrost is melting. We're getting more methane up there. There's methylization that comes from how we do factory farming. Whatever. It's accelerating in its worstness. Yeah. But like even if we were totally renewable on the energy economy tomorrow, we got a 100-year hangover. And we got 40 years left of coral. This doesn't match very well. Right? And it started like opening my eyes to like an entire class of problems, which are like environmental total disasters that will happen before the 100-year hangover gets burned up. So anyway, that leads to like now, which is like I'm spending a bunch of time visiting all these labs around the world, talking with scientists and engineers who have potentially the most promising stuff relative to directly improving the condition of the environment, or like at least extending the life of some of these things so that they can get past the hangover. I mean, even surviving the hangover would mean like we retain 5% of the coral on Earth. Yep. And then we try to rebuild from there, which would be like a 1,000-year stride. But I think 1,000 years is way better than like infinity. Because like if we wipe it out, that's called extinction. It's not coming back within the lifetime that human beings are on Earth. Yeah. Right? That's like not happening again while we're still here. So like I don't think that people like totally feeling exactly the intensity of this yet. But as I like look through those things, and the other thing, like you talked about the algorithm, my mind works on rates and not states. Right? So like most people look at the state of the world, it's like this is great or this is terrible or whatever. It's like and they have emotional reaction to the state of it. My mind works on rates. So like when I try to solve, you guys will see this if we have one-on-ones. It's like when I try to solve your problems, I just load everything into working memory, and I'm imagining all the rates of them running simultaneously. And it's like, okay, this is how fast you're losing this over here. This is how your supply chain is working. This is happening here, and just and I'm running all the rates like 10, 15, 20 of them at a time simultaneously in my head. And then it's like, then I feel like how I feel based on how the rates are going. So the rates on the environment are horrible. Yep. The state is actually the best it's going to be probably for the next 100 years. This is like the best environment that we're going to have for a good long time. But like our rates on it is to keep hurting it harder and harder and harder. And like before we're going to hit like our rock bottom point, because I hope there's a rock bottom point before. I mean, we're extincting species at 1,000 times the base rate. Yeah. Right? So species do naturally go extinct, but about 1/1000th the speed of what we're doing. We're like 10 years away from there being no elephants, no African elephants. Like we've wiped out like rhinos, like to a number of species of rhino to the point where there just isn't enough genetic diversity for them to come back. Yep. And like we're not understanding how far we are, but we are so far, and like that's still the state. My mind's running the rate. I'm like, oh yeah, and we have And we have equatorial viruses like West Nile up at the Canadian border now. That's not normal.
Yep.
We have Zika, which is another equatorial virus, just shooting up through North America like a lightning bolt. You know, it's going to take like 5 years for it to hit the majority of North America. So it's like, without getting it into all the stuff, I'm seeing the rates, and I'm very kind of like, well, what is the best thing that you can do given all those rates?
Yeah.
So I'm a scientist / engineer. I spend a bunch of time in the entrepreneurial space. So my best thing is like, let me go find the things that have a modicum of hope of changing something about those rates, and then put them in an operational and financial context where they can begin to start modifying the rate. So that's it.
That's it. So how? So you know, with that perspective, so I think a lot of people feel that. How do you? Maybe this isn't the right word, but how do you keep a sense of hope or drive, or like what's inspiring you through this, and not just having you know, set up shop in a cabin in the woods and enjoy the remnants of this?
Well, I mean, one thing that actually motivates me, though I think it would depress a lot of other people, is that, you know, it took us a couple thousand years, at least, to kind of mess this up, depending on whether you take the start as the start of agriculture, or you take the start as like industrialization or whatever. It's a couple hundred years, maybe a couple thousand years, depending on how you want to count it. But it's like, we messed it up over a pretty long time period. And I'm like, I think it's realistic that it might take us 1,000 years to dig us out of it. So like, I kind of think, well, in my lifetime, let me help to do the first 3 to 5%.
Yeah.
And I won't even be the only person doing that. It'll probably be 1 million people to try to get the first 3 to 5%.
Yeah.
But to me, it's like, that's what we gotta do, so we gotta do it. Right? Like, to me, it's motivating to be like, well, let's start doing that. Because like, the more time we don't do that, actually, number one, there'll be a lot more to do.
Yep.
Or so little to do that you'll just want to give up. You know, you know, to do some of that first 3 to 5%, I don't know, it's exciting. Like, let's make, because it's not only just make this thing successful or make this, because, you know, not that like it's not useful to have more resources, but like personally, you know, Lucille and I spent almost nothing. Right? Our monthly expenses are like,
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, the extra money doesn't change our lives very much. Right? I don't care which vehicle does it, or, you know, who gets the credit for it, or what have you. It's like, let's just catalyze it and move. Right? And it actually makes things so much simpler. Because it's like, I can create a thing. If the vehicle is not going to, if the rates aren't going to hit it, you know, just like put a team in place and jump. And not because I don't like you guys, but it's like, you guys are going to do this arc, which will have this much service to the world, and that's totally great. But it's going to be at an order of magnitude, which is 1/1000th of what we need. So it's like, yes, do that. Let's get the 1/1000th, and I will also keep going.
Yeah.
So,
how do you? I think a lot of entrepreneurs in this room can relate to, you know, almost like an obsession. It's a lot more than excitement around kind of sparking this revolution. How do you maintain your energy when you have so much motivation and passion behind what you're trying to do?
I think like the balance point is that I also find it endlessly fascinating. And this is kind of a related point, but really, you know, outside of the stuff I've been talking about so far, which is like the mechanical techniques by which you could go restore the environment. So like, what is the science? What is the engineering? Where would be the distribution points? How do you actually deploy this? What's the financial scale? All the stuff that you guys think about all day anyway. So like, there's like an underpinning, which is really simple idea. I have a complex title for it, which is the psychological antecedents to global prosperity. But the really simple idea is like, we have the world we have because we think the way that we do. So there's another part of me which is like endlessly fascinated in consciousness and the way that people relate to each other and how they see their worlds. And I was just having a conversation like a couple days ago, and a really simple insight came up. So you need to know this anecdote before I share the insight, which is, I have this phrase that I've been using for a while, which is, technology is always wielded at the level of consciousness of the society that wields it. So we split the atom at the beginning of the 20th century, and we could have used that to make like infinite power and generate no carbon from that power. You know, you have nuclear waste, but actually, I don't know, plants actually do better with nuclear waste than they do with all the shit that we've done. And no, I mean seriously, there's like a lot of like decommissioned nuclear sites, and humans leave it, and you go back, and the biodiversity is actually pretty good in those places. And not because of mutants. It's like it's just healthier without people there. Anyway, we're more dangerous than like high levels of radiation. That's another way to think about that. Anyway, so at the beginning of the 20th century, we had the opportunity. We split the atom. We technologically had the basis to provide infinite clean power, clean-ish power, to the world. We had a wartime nationalistic consciousness. It was a couple years before the start of World War I. And what did we do with that? We made a nuclear arsenal large enough to blow up every major city 3 times over and wipe off every single human from the face of the earth. And we're still dealing with that 100 years later, right? That was our consciousness expressed through the current level of technology, right? So we have a different type of consciousness at the beginning of the 21st century, which I can talk about. But like the main insight that I had was like, okay, we're at this really unusual stage where consciousness, like the evolution of consciousness needs to happen faster than the evolution of technology, otherwise we're done, right? Because like if technology were to get 10 times more powerful and we were still this conscious, we're done, right? It's that simple. Like a lot of people ask me, it's like, yeah, like the plush job in Google X, and that was the one where it's like, yeah, you make more than $1 million a year and you work on the coolest shit. That sounds like a pretty good job. But it's like there's a point where it's like I am accelerating the tech side of this curve when actually consciousness needs to win, at least in this part of this leg of the game. Now, if we got to the point where everybody, you know, because here's a thought I had when making the self-driving car, and I don't know if you totally want this on camera, but it's fine. But like at some point in making the self-driving car, I just had a thought where it's like, wait a second, you could just tell the car to go to a specific place and fill it with explosives, and basically be a suicide bomber without ever killing yourself. Duh, right? But then it's like, holy crap, well, do we stop building the car? Of course not, but still, like, that's the level of consciousness that we have in the world today. So when that car exists, is that a real potential outcome? Absolutely. Right? Now look, if everybody was like the Dalai Lama, well, I wouldn't worry about that use case ever. They'd be like, why would you put that in there? It makes no sense. The car is to help people, right? But it's like, you know, we don't have that consciousness. So we're like, so I like I'm, you know, still working on the project, but like, you know, it's like twisting you a little bit inside, where it's like, you know, in the world that we have right now, that is not only a thing that might happen, it's a thing that has a great likelihood of happening. Now, a lot of lives will be saved, probably way more lives will be saved than will be damaged in that way. And they'll start putting safeguards like bomb sniffers inside of cars, which sounds insane, but it's like still cheaper to do than like having like a huge building come down. But it's like, that is the level of consciousness we're at right now. And it's, that's why consciousness needs to advance faster than technology, at least for the next couple decades.
So I have to ask, because it's election night.
Oh, yay.
And you're talking about consciousness, and I hope this doesn't go too dark because we have like 3 minutes left.
Oh.
But what do you think and feel looking at the current election?
I think the current election is like a perfect mirror of what's happening in consciousness right now. Like, we have had so much progress on civil rights, and simultaneously, you know, there have been folks that have been economically disenfranchised, and they feel like they're losing out. And the whole kind of pushback around political correctness and all that sort of thing, like, the people are angry. And I think most people like misinterpret anger as an emotion. So remember, flat about everything, right? So it's like, most people like interpret anger as like, that's so wrong of you, like, why would you do that? Like, violence is not the way to go. But it's like, typically, people do not express anger or rage unless they feel incredibly disempowered and hopeless and cornered. That's actually what's happening. Now you get scared because the anger and rage is dangerous, and maybe they shave their heads and like, you know, throw fire bombs or burn crosses or do the many things that anger can lead to. And that's what we get scared of. But like at the fundamentals of this is a person that really deserves a lot of compassion. There's something about their life that has left them so empty, so disenfranchised. They don't have anything but rage. And it's like, we don't treat them like that. Right? Like, it's like those crazy people on the right, like, what are they doing? And like, you know, the Republican Party's been hijacked by these insane people. It's like, or like there's something that is really fundamentally happening for them that is hurting them incredibly deeply. And we haven't had a single lick of conversation about it. And like, maybe the only way they can express it is through racism right now. Maybe the only way they can express it is through xenophobia. And I'm not a fan of any of the ways they're expressing it. That stuff's clearly bullshit. Right? Like, that doesn't make any sense. That won't solve your rage either, in all honesty. Right? But it's like, when do we open the discussion? Like, whoever wins tonight, this discussion is still the discussion to have.
Yeah, we're still here.
Right? Like, these people are still here. Everybody is still here. And like, there's a way that we've constructed our society which has not only allowed this rage to continue, it's like made it so that even the basic humanity around the discussion is leaking out. I think like through the election cycle, people have become less empathetic, you know, on either side toward each other. And that's the absolute opposite of what needs to happen for us to have any progress forward, you know, whoever is elected tonight. So that's all. We'll work on this. Right.
Tom, I could be here with you all night, but you got to move over to dinner and then watch the election results come in. And thank you so much for being with us all day today and for tonight.